Your Technology Tutor, Episode 4. Today's topic, what you need to know about flashcards for your camera.
Welcome to the Your Technology Tutor program, where you'll learn how to be more successful using personal technologies like Mac computers, iPhones and iPads, useful software, cool web tools, videotaping and editing, digital photography, and more. And now, here's the host of our program, Your Technology Tutor, Chet Davis.
Welcome to today's program. So glad to have you along with me as together we learn to become more successful using our personal technologies. Today's topic is presented to help you better understand flash memory. More specifically, SD card technology. These are the little postage stamp sized cards that are amazingly thin that many of us have in our digital cameras, digital video cameras, and even smartphones. Now, there are a number of different card formats out there that are using flash technology. Some of them include Memory Stick Duo, primarily in Sony equipment. There's also some cameras that continue to use what are called compact flash. If we were going back in the museum, we'd look at another one called Smart Media Cards, SMC, but those aren't really found too much anymore. And technically speaking, the little USB thumb drives or USB jump drives that many of us use, around our computers are also considered flash memory, but I'm talking about flash memory cards, the thin cards themselves that are designed to be inserted in a device and stay in a device, whereas the little USB jump drives or thumb drives are designed to kind of ferry data, move content between devices. So we might put it in our computer and put some files on there and then take it out and then put it into another computer at work or home or school, what have you. So again, we're focusing on these memory cards and the SD family in particular. First to note, when I say memory, these little cards are used by our devices to save or store data onto them. Digital photos, digital video, and in the case of mobile phones and tablets and pads, these can even be used to store audio content, documents, and even apps, software. Now, the technology is called flash memory because unlike traditional computer hard drives or disk drives, there's no moving part, no spinning platter like you'll see in a traditional disk drive that the data is recorded onto and read from. Instead, the data is recorded or written onto an array, a grouping of memory cells made up of transistors, little tiny components. Now, this was developed by a scientist who was working for the Toshiba company back in 1980. Hard to believe it's been around that long. Now, according to Toshiba, one of the inventor's colleagues suggested the name flash because the erasure process reminded that individual of the flash of a camera. Now, flash memory offers fast read access time, so the ability to get that data off the device and play it back, which is critical, especially for video. And it's also mechanically shock resistant. It's highly durable. It's able to withstand high pressure, temperature, etc. Much better than the spinning platter disk drives that are its sister or cousin. Now, how we're going to divide this out, we're going to look at understanding the different types of flash media by reviewing the three categories that differentiate them: format, capacity, and transfer speed. Once you understand those three, and the format's pretty easy, you're going to see, but the capacity and transfer speed, those are the ones I get the most questions on, in particular transfer speed. And having an incorrect transfer speed can be the difference between going on vacation this summer with your new camcorder and coming back with memories, or being frustrated when you're there in whatever islands you're traveling to and find out that your camera says can't record video. All right, we're going to talk about that. We're also going to take a check-in with talk briefly about a specialized SD card that has Wi-Fi capability. And we're going to talk about some suggestions, some tips about the best way to use the cards, store the cards, and even what you might do if you accidentally erase the contents of your card. All right. Again, we're focused primarily on the SD cards today because, again, that has the greatest footprint in society. In other words, there are the most devices out there that use SD cards, so that's why I'm choosing to focus on them today. Now, there's 3 different card formats, and when I say card formats, I'm talking about the size, okay? The size of the card device. Now, there are little adapters that allow you to go between some of these sizes, so they can be interchanged, but most folks find it easier just to buy the corresponding correct size for your specific device. And if you're curious at all, you can bring your device into the store when you're purchasing a card, or check the owner's manual, the user's manual, or go onto the website for the company product and look at the specs or specifications page. Almost every product has it out there, and it'll tell you what kind of format card it uses or requires. Now, the 3 different kinds of formats we have in the SD family is SD, the original, which is stands for Secure Digital. Now, again, this was created in the 1980s, and some of the consumer electronics companies were thrilled the name Secure because not only is your data secure and safe, which most of us tend to think, but there was also some DRM technology built into it, digital rights management, that allowed for the preventing of taking copyrighted contents off of the card if you didn't want it to. So it could be like play only, okay, ROM, read-only memory, that they couldn't record or download it. But most folks don't use it for that capacity. So we have SD, the original SD card, and there's still a lot of them out today. That's the biggest of the cards. Now, in the show notes today, which you'll find on my website at yourtechnologytutor.com, yourtechnologytutor.com/4, just the number 4 after yourtechnologytutor.com. That'll get you to the show notes, and I have links that I'll be talking about today, and I also have some images. So there's an image, there's a picture that shows the 3 different cards sitting on top of each other, so you can do a direct size comparison. And the SD card is the largest one, and the one that most of us think about probably when you talk about SD card. The next smallest size is called a mini SD card, M-I-N-I, so it's mini SD. And then we have micro SD, which is the teeniest, tiniest. And oftentimes the greatest number of applications that use the micro SD card are smartphones and cell phones. So there actually is the capacity on some manufacturers' cell phones to be able to boost or increase the amount of memory in your device to save photos and music and apps. Okay, so you can extend the life, not the life, but you can extend the capacity of some mobile devices by putting in a larger sized micro SD card. So many of these devices have their own internal memory, but you can boost it by putting in the micro SD card. And by the way, I have a lot of listeners in my community who use the iPhone. The iPhone does not have the capacity to boost the internal memory. It is a designated, dedicated internal memory size. Whatever memory you bought with your phone is the memory that you have. You can swap out stuff, of course, and delete it and transfer data, but you can't increase the memory by adding more chips. That's some of the other phone manufacturers. Okay, so we have SD, mini SD, and micro SD. Now, along with that, when we get to speed, there's some other acronyms that go along with it, and again, we're going to talk about that in just a moment. That's the card format. Okay, so it's, first of all, you got to start there. Do I have the correct size, which also relates to format? Do I have the correct size that's going to fit in my device? If you don't have that, then these other two classifications don't matter at all because it isn't going to fit. Okay. Now, there is an adapter, though, that will allow a micro SD card to fit inside of an SD slot, but you can't fit the larger SD card inside of a micro SD device. All right, the next characteristic or item for discussion is card transfer speed. Now, there's 2 classifications here, and if this is confusing, take a look at the show notes again. It'll be a little bit more clear. But there's speed class, and then there's a new one called UHS speed class. And UHS stands for ultra high speed. Okay. Now, you'll only find UHS designated on some of the newer devices. It is really new, recent, and you cannot use UHS cards on the earlier products. They don't have the capacity. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But let's go back to speed class, because if you're using a standard SD card, or an SDHC or an SDXC, which we'll talk about, then you want to make sure you're using the proper speed to the application you're using it for. So the speed class is the means of measuring and identifying the minimum performance of the device. Well, what do you mean, Chet? What I mean is to ensure a quality recording and playback of videos, photos, other data. The manufacturer says, okay, we've created this SD card and we've tested it, and it will play back and record at this speed. It's speed number X. And that's the speed at which they're guaranteeing it's going to record content. Now, there's 4 different classes. Class 2, Class 4, Class 6, and 10. I know we skipped 8. I don't know why, but they did. 2, 4, 6, and 10. And the lower the rating, the lower the class, Class 2, for example, is the slowest at the ability to record data. So a Class 2 has a minimum sustained DTS. Now, DTS is one of those TLAs, 3-letter acronyms, and the DTS stands for Data Transfer Speed. Data Transfer Speed. Data Transfer Speed is DTS when you see that in reference to cards. And that's how fast, what's the minimum? How fast are essentially not guaranteeing, but are you agreeing, dear manufacturing company, that this will record video and photos in my camera? Okay? So Class 2 has a minimum DTS of 2 megabytes per second. Class 4 has a minimum sustained transfer of 4 megabytes per second. Class 6, 6 megabytes per second. And you might have guessed, Class 10 has a minimum sustained data transfer speed of 10 megabytes per second. So you can see it does increase. And here's the big thing. Here's the takeaway for you. Okay? This, again, is one of the most critical decisions to make when purchasing cards for your camera or your video cameras. This is not where you want to save a few dimes by going with a lower speed card. Okay? If you're shooting video, if your digital camera or your camcorder is shooting HD video, I recommend going with a Class 10. Now, the manufacturers are kind of wishy-washy in some of the terminology. And I need to say this too. The developers are the ones who certify their cards for a particular speed. So it's not like there's a parent organization who's judging these and saying, yes, you are correct. This is a Class 4 or a Class 6 or a 10. The manufacturers are saying that. And I think, it's self-policing. And by and large, from everything that I've read, it looks like they're pretty honest and pretty accurate about this. But again, if you want the best performance in these SD cards, go for a Class 10. Now, how do you know, Chet? Well, it may not be as clear on the packaging as you might think. I mean, I'm aware of this stuff, and sometimes I have to look twice on the product in an online catalog or even in the store. Like, well, where's the class rating? It's not. Yes, it's on there, but sometimes it's not like in big bold letters. It's a letter C for class, and then the numeral is inside of it. It's the C almost looks like a complete circle, but it's open on one end. So there's a C with a 2, or a C with a 4, or a C with a 6, or a C with a 10. That's the class number. And a C with a 10 in it gets you your best performance. You pay more for it because it's a better performing device. It's high speed, okay? Now, they're saying a Class 10 will give you full HD video recording, full high definition, and still consecutive recording. If you're a still photographer and you use the burst mode, you're out capturing sports, Little League baseball or snowboarding, whatever, or maybe it's a hummingbird, outside your window, you're capturing it in burst mode, you're getting, 8 to 10 photos in a second. You have to use a high-speed card because the camera is writing to the card very quickly. 6, 8, 10 photos in a second. 1, 2, 3. That's quick. So it has to have that high-speed card. So if you're doing HD video or you're doing burst mode, you want to pick a higher speed class card. You could get away with a Class 6 doing HD video recording. I would not go with a 4 and definitely not a 2. No way. Ain't going to happen. In fact, I was working with a colleague, actually one of my clients. I was doing some training with them, some one-on-one training about the cameras, and one of the first questions is that, great, I'm so glad you're able to help me with this, Chet. He's got this nice digital SLR, single reflex camera, and was attempting to shoot video. And I said, I'll bet I know what the problem is. He said, what? So I took it out, opened up the card. I said, bet it's a class 4. Sure enough, it's a class 4. Some people say you can get away with it, but some cameras, it's just not going to work. So go with the class 6, but ideally a class 10 if you're doing, again, burst photography or HD video. Now, I do need to say something about a newer technology as well. The UHS, ultra high speed class, and its little icon is the letter U with a numeral 1 in it. Letter U with a numeral 1 inside of it. This is found on some newer SDHC and SDXC cards, and it gives a transfer speed up to between 50 and 104 megabytes per second. Whoa! 50 to 104. So 5 to 10 times the speed that we're enjoying now on the Class 10 cards. Here's the trick, though. Don't just run out and say, Chet told me about this. I'm going to go get a, UHS-1 card because it's the fastest and the best for me. Only technology that was developed to be able to use this can use it. So it has to specify on the device that it is capable of using the UHS-1 bus, the UHS-1 speed. If it's not able to use that device, it won't even work in a slower mode. So make sure your equipment is provided. And I should tell you, in terms of future awareness, there is a technology designated as UHS-2, Roman numeral 2, that raises the theoretical data transfer speed up to 312 megabytes per second, 30 times faster than today's Class 10. Right now, there's no widely available components or devices available commercially that will match this. But, of course, as this program sits around in the archives and people listen to this in months and years to come, that'll be the speed of choice at some point in time. So, again, that's UHS-2. All right, it's time for our cool find, and you may know if you've listened to my other programs in the podcast, the cool find is a segment each time when I'm going to share a cool gadget, an application, or a web tool that I think is pretty worthy of sharing with you. This week, it's a website, a cool website. If you have a big event planned for the near future, like maybe it's a family reunion, an outdoor wedding in the family, a big camping trip, outdoor workshops like I provide, or maybe you have an extended vacation somewhere special. Well, you're keenly interested in what the weather's going to look like, right? Well, here's an answer. You can click on over to the website. It's weatherwiz.com. Sorry, the WeatherWiz. THE weatherwiz.com. No spaces. And enter in your location. And there's two designations. One is U.S. and then the rest of the world. And you enter in the location, your specific date, okay, the month, the year, and the date, and you'll be presented with a weather prediction that's been higher than 83% accurate in the past 35 years. How's that for accurate? Now, your event can be any time away between 7 days to 2 years in the future. The cool thing is the service is totally free. It's run and started by a gentleman named Jim Witt, who's been a weather buff all his life. You can read the About section on his website. And he developed a high school weather station and science program, I believe he's in Florida, that has been recognized around the world. Again, that's The Weather Wiz, theweatherwiz.com. All right, and that's this week's cool scoop. So I just a lot of fun. I love sharing those little tiny nuggets. And by the way, if you've got a suggestion for our weekly cool find, go ahead and let me know at my website. That's yourtechnologytutor.com. Continuing on, what you need to know about flashcards. The last of the kind of three categories for SD cards is card capacity. Now that you have a better idea of what speed transfer to select, transfer speed to select, class number. Let's talk about capacity. This is the amount of data that can possibly be stored on a flash card. Now, we have the original SD card, which was created again back in 1980 and developed and used through the 90s and still used today. Then there's SDHC, and SDHC stands for Secure Digital High Capacity. So the technology was refined and developed, I believe, about 1999, and SDHC came out by the manufacturers when digital photography became more robust along with HD video cameras, and they said we need to be able to put more data onto these devices than we were before. The needs have changed, and so we have SDHC, and a third option here is SDXC, which stands for Secure Digital Extreme Capacity. And who doesn't want an extreme card, So those are the different designations. Now, the SD cards, SDHC, SDXC, are usually offered today. You can find some with megabytes, but mostly gigabytes. And so we're talking on the average between a 2 gigabyte, 4 gigabyte, 8 gigabyte, 16 gigabyte, 32 gigabyte card. There are some 64 gigabyte cards. And in the SDXC family, I think it goes all the way up to 2 terabytes. Yikes. Okay, 2,000 gigabytes. But for most of us, we're talking in the range under 100 gigabytes, under a terabyte. Just to give you a quick sense, and I do have this chart, the link to the chart provided by the SD Card Association, sdcard.org, and again, the link is in the show notes. You can go to see this information. But as a rule, okay, a 16 gigabyte card in terms of video, HD video, MPEG-4, H.264, which is one of the common classifications some of today's digital video cameras will record at, a 16 gigabyte card will get you around 160 minutes. Okay, little under 3 hours of video on a 16 gigabyte card. So this is really important to be aware of before you go on vacation, before you go on that trip, business or pleasure, so you know that you have enough cards, enough content, enough data space to be able to save what it is you're shooting. Now, if you're a photographer instead of a video person, well, on that same 16 gigabyte card, you can get around 6,000 digital photos, digital images, with a 10 megapixel card. So we're talking a resolution of 3648 by 2763. So that's a good sized, high quality image, around 6,000 of them on a 16 gigabyte card. So there are different settings. Each card has its own, each camera, I should say, has its own specifications. Even in video, there's oftentimes different settings for the mode, whether you're doing full HD or, if you're not going 1920 by 1080, maybe you're doing 720, or even a lower speed, an economy mode. So those are all variables, but there's this great chart. Again, the reference is in the show notes in case you need or want to have a look-see and make sure you've got enough data for your upcoming work. And again, in the tips today, I've got some suggestions for dealing with the common uses of these cards. Now, oftentimes, some of the better manufacturers also put this information on the card, so it's easy for you to kind of figure out and understand. All right, so some tips with using SD cards successfully. Now that you've purchased the card that's going to be best suited both for the equipment you're using and the application you're using it for, first of all, keep the cards in their case when they're not inside the device. Many times the card comes with its own little plastic case. It's nothing to write home about, just a little cheap little plastic case, but use it. Use those little cases because this will prevent the metal contacts on the SD card from coming in contact with another electrical device, a possible electrical discharge or short circuiting, and it keeps the cards safe from damage or junk or liquid. Okay, so keep the cards in their little plastic case and put those cards in a safe spot. I've got a little desk tray in my desk right here in the lab that I keep my cards in, so I always know where they're at. And they're if you leave them just sitting on the desk, it's easy for them to get bumped, or knocked off. And they're so tiny they could drop in the trash or under the leg of your chair and damaged. So keep them in a special place. maybe in your camera case. Okay, that I do that, and I even have a little zippered case that I use that holds, I think, 16 different cards. So when I travel, when I go out and about and do my workshops and presentations, I can keep my cards with me, keep them organized and safe, which is a bonus. Now, we're advised not to leave our cards in environments that will expose them to temperature extremes. Okay, you're going to take that trip to Arizona this summer. Don't leave it in the trunk, in the middle of the day. And when you make that trip to Fairbanks, Alaska, don't leave it in the rental car overnight. Some common sense things. You avoid exposing it to moisture. You don't want to drop it in the river. Don't put it in your swimsuit pocket. Expose it to other chemicals. Avoid bending the cards and avoid exposing them to magnetic currents. Okay. Here's some tips that a lot of folks that use the cards find they get better performance from them with this. Don't turn off your camera too quickly after capturing a photo or recording video. For example, maybe I just recorded this precious moment with a newborn family member, and I click the pause button on the camera, and then I turn off the camera right away. Here's the trick. I click the pause button, and it's stopped recording, but it may not have stopped writing to the card. Okay, very important. Let it finish writing to the card. This is the same thing with photography. Less critical, but just the same, especially if you're doing full-size, high-quality images on a good quality SLR. You want to make sure you give the camera time to write before you turn it off. If you don't, more than likely what you'll do is you'll lose at least that video, that scene, or that photo, and it's possible it could corrupt some of the other images or video on there. So and I'm not talking about leaving it on for an hour. I'm talking about minutes, a few extra minutes, okay? We're also advised switching the camera power off after we wait before removing or inserting a card, okay? Some recommendations suggest don't switch the card with the power on. Okay, these are extra precautions, but sometimes extra precautions can make the world of difference between 100% success and sketchy success. When you format a new card, we're advised to format it with the camera we'll be using it in. If you switch SD cards between different cameras like I do, you'll notice sometimes the camera will reject it or not detect a usable card. It'll say, don't understand, or incompatible file format. So the formatting process is different for each camera. Check your owner's manual on how to do it correctly. And use care here, though, not to format a card that has data that you want to keep, because reformatting involves erasing what's already there. So when you reformat a card, whatever used to be there is gone forever, Clementine. Okay, you need to know that. So you're not adding to what was there. You're putting it in place of what was there and getting it ready to record new stuff, okay? Now, some photographers recommend not filling up your card to top capacity. So don't keep shooting or keep recording until it says full, 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 can't record anymore. Some have found that can lead to irregularities in the performance of their card and problems not only with data but with future use of the card. So you don't have to, you do half full, but don't record it till it's totally up to capacity. Similarly, keep awareness, keep a track of the camera battery power when you're out shooting outside, and avoid it dropping really low. Okay. The reason why is it could affect memory card performance. It still might work, but may not work as well as it's supposed to. All right, next suggestion. Always take more than one card with you. This seems sort of logical, but I've had those times and places, I'm getting all ready for a trip or some vacation, and darn, I forgot to get another memory card. That's okay. I've got enough capacity on this. But, if one card fills up, and then it's a matter of choosing, oh, darn, what do I do? Okay. Well, I've got a future program coming up, taking your technology on vacation with you. That'll be next month. And some great suggestions. Spent 30 days traveling in Europe with the family last year and used my digital and video cameras and have some great suggestions how to manage all that and shuffle between devices. But the short sweet right now is take more than one card with you, because if one fills up, you have another. And if a card malfunctions, you at least have another one to capture. And if you found out before, the barren truth here, it's much more affordable to purchase cards at home ahead of time when you're not on vacation overseas or at a resort or in the middle of nowhere and can't purchase a card. So a little bit of foresight and planning makes a world of difference there. Some folks advise deleting images and files only while you're connected to your computer, not to delete them when the card is in your camera out in the field. The thought is twofold. One, the process is more easily to control on your screen of your laptop or desktop computer, avoiding accidental erasure of the scene. Oh, I thought that was the scene I wanted to get rid of, the little thumbnail on your screen, Also, deleting a bunch of images in your computer results in only one erase cycle on that card rather than multiple cycles on the camera in the field. Okay? Just 3 more little tips here. When done with a card in your computer, make extra sure you remove or eject the card prior to removing it. Especially if you're on a Mac, I call it being slapped. There's this big warning that pops on screen and bounces. That card's not been ejected properly. You probably screwed it up and erased a bunch of stuff, you numbskull. So make sure, click on the card, and then the file menu, you can eject the device before removing it. Give it a few seconds and make sure it's clearly ejected. Second to the last, label your cards. Now, I put a little tiny numeral, not with a ballpoint pen, by the way, because you don't want to scratch the card or damage it, but just with a fine tip marker, for example, keeping track of which card you used last. And then lastly, it's a good idea. Take a photo of your business card or your luggage tag and then save it to that card. If you misplace the card, if you lose the card and someone finds it with a kind soul, it's more likely to be found and returned to you. Especially on the internet, people are doing that all the time nowadays. Lastly, if you accidentally erase data on one of your cards, several of the foremen say, hey, I accidentally erased this card. I just took, my daughter's wedding, whatever. How can I get the data back? Well, there is a possibility you might be able to regain that information. You may know that when we delete data on a computer device, it removes the file from accessing it. In other words, it's not visible to us, but it's often not gone until we re-record or write over that file. Okay? So it's oftentimes still there. But if you've gone out and, shot a bunch more video and photos, it's probably gone. But if you just erased it yesterday or this morning, it's very likely you can use one of a different couple applications to get it back. And I've got one such application in the show notes that lets you retrieve data from your erased card. All right, our quick commercial. You'll find the growing episodes of this program, Technology Tutor Show, along with regular posts on practical technology news, tips, video tutorials, more, my upcoming web workshops and live workshops around the continent. This is all found at yourtechnologytutor.com. That's yourtechnologytutor.com. That's it for today's program. Thanks so much for joining me today. By the way, links presented on today's program, along with a summary of today's show and additional notes, will be found in the show notes. You can find those show notes at yourtechnologytutor.com/4. yourtechnologytutor.com/4. Our next program, the topic will be gaining a better understanding of your home computer network. Until then, your technology tutor, Chet Davis, signing off. Have a great rest of the day.